So when I'm talking about why I'm so excited about the future, it's because I'm doing these automated workflows and I'm learning about all these new technologies at the same time. I'm implementing different technologies, and as I grow, I'm able to put in these new technologies. So we're seeing right now within supply chain, so much room to grow, so much room for optimization as well. One other thing that I notice on a global level is that people do want to make more money. We want the GDP to increase. So I'm actually a part of the United Nations, the UN CFACT, all about trade facilitation as well. We have a couple amazing initiatives, the Data Pipeline Initiative, the Data Harmonization Initiative, and these initiatives from the UN is specifically to push ahead global trade. And using new technologies, they recognize is a way to do that. So let's talk a little bit about import-export. So globalization has driven trade growth 3.5 times since the 1980s. This is with trades between China and Europe, United States. Everyone's sort of working together, and we see this rapid growth, right there in this line graph. And I know you're thinking I promised you an exciting presentation, and now I'm showing you a line graph, and you're like, that is not exciting. And I agree, line graphs aren't exciting, but it shows a good point. If you look at the last 10 years or so, we have a little bit of stagnation. We had this rapid increase, and now we have that stagnation. Now, it's pretty obvious. I would ask you, what is the number one reason causing this stagnation? I'll flip back kind of quickly here. We'll go back to this quote over here. The number one world problem, this is according to the World Bank in 2018, and we'll go back to our very exciting line graph. Many causes of the stagnation, but that is the number one problem in the world to solve. Basically, global supply chains have not kept pace. We have disconnected workflows, massive pain points, and inefficiencies. I think that Alexander did a great job discussing blockchain specifically and how blockchain should be used, in its basic form within supply chain. So let's move ahead to kind of looking at supply chains in general. Now, you're not going to believe this statement, but this is my favorite slide. I love this slide. And the reason I love this, because it breaks down 3 very important aspects of supply chain. Your actual flow of goods, the actual physical commodities. We have the flow of documents, also from the manufacturer all the way down the line, through customs brokers, customs officials, ports. This actually doesn't even give it justice, the amount of hands that are touching these documents. And then we have the flow of money as well. Also, Alexander covered this amazingly through the different intermediary banks. There's fees and delays all the way down as well. So if we take all these different flows, we have to have these flows in sync. Once they're in sync, you can optimize your supply chain. So let's kind of smash them all together and show this graphic over here. This is actually a graphic from DHL. And according to IBM, we actually have about 40 handling points all the way down the supply chain. And if you think of 40 handling points down the supply chain, think of how many opportunities there are for human error. How many opportunities there are for counterfeit goods to get entered into the supply chain without visibility across these 40 points of handling. Not to mention also there's poor visibility, lack of trust with which Alexander covered amazingly as well. And of course there's high fees with all the bank transfers, and this all together slows down businesses and what's causing that stagnation on that very great answer. So let's talk about emerging techs a little bit and why I'm so excited about the future. Like I mentioned before, you guys are all experts in your own specific businesses. And within your business, you know what works well. You see on a daily basis, we make money this way, this is the best manager we have for this specific job. You know it works really well within your businesses. Now, what people can admit, but don't necessarily like to admit, is that within your business, you also see the problems. You also see those pain points more than everyone else. You have this internal view of what's happening in your business on a day-to-day basis. So that's why we have to come to you guys. We have to come to the experts within their own individual fields, telling us what your pain points are, what's causing these issues in your business. And everything, especially within technology, within these emerging technologies, comes as an idea at first. Saying, I have an idea. I think if I could do this, I can improve my business. Everything starts off as an idea. So never kind of, shy away from saying, oh, okay, if we could try to implement this within our supply chain, this is gonna help, because the tech companies, they'll follow your lead. That's the way it has to go. And as Alexander mentioned as well, blockchain in particular, because he spoke about that quite a bit, is not a panacea for every problem you have out there. It's not going to solve everything. And even within different blockchains, you need interoperability between all these different techs. So you're basically using the tech you need at the right time when you need it. So let's look at these individual texts over here. And I won't spend too much time describing blockchain because I think Alexander did a bang up, amazing job on that. So first of all, a trustless network. He talked about that quite a bit, and I think that is extremely important. It removes the need for data validation and digitizing documentation on the blockchain as well. I'll show you a quick quote over here. This is from Pierre Benson of the DHL group. If you look at the biggest rise that's going to happen in the next 10 years, it's the digitalization of logistics. Now, I think Alexander used the word huge about being able to store things in blocks and make them unique. And I can't accentuate that further, I guess, because huge is the right way to go. But in my opinion, that is the most important part of blockchain. That you can have something that's digital, shareable all around the world, and still be 100% unique. It's the original. I take you back to a real world example of the Mona Lisa in Paris, France, where Alexander's from. So the Mona Lisa, beautiful painting, absolutely amazing, and people travel from all around the world to see this painting. Now there are billions of copies of the Mona Lisa. There are posters of it all over the world. In the right lighting and the right distance, you can almost fool yourself that this Mona Lisa poster is the original. Nobody travels to see a poster of the Mona Lisa, no matter how good the lighting is. Everyone goes to see that original version. And what the blockchain gives you for every single thing written on the block is something that's even more unique, even more original than the Mona Lisa itself. So we are looking at, for storing documentation, creating our own version of the Mona Lisa for every single supply chain, every single shipment, every single data point that we're adding to the digital ledger. And as well, just the simple, structure of blockchain and how blocks have to be added in a chain, and the way supply chain has these different flows that have to be synced up together. Just the sheer nature of blockchain makes sense for supply chain as well. And that's why people, say that supply chain and blockchain go hand in hand. They do, but once again, as Alex mentioned as well, they have to go hand in hand using other techs and using the right tech at the right time. So our next emerging technology, which to me is some of the most amazing stuff out there, is the Internet of Things, or IoT. This is not, we're saying it's emerging because it's growing around the world, but IoT has been around for a very long time. I'm seeing a ton of IoT devices right now, all these different cell phones, everyone's taking pictures, in your pockets all the time, you're being tracked by different things. IoT is everywhere. It connects devices across the internet, it allows custom functionality, and we have crazy cross-vertical, consumer to commercial uses of IoT as well. So we're basically using IoT devices within manufacturing facilities, within CNC machines to send back maintenance reports or temperature readings. We're using IoT devices in our homes to change the temperature based on our comfort levels or lighting levels. If we're approaching your home, your house can warm up so it's the right temperature for you. And that's all thanks to these IoT sensors everywhere around the world. So I'll give you a quick quote as well, because the IoT is everywhere, but it is growing astronomically. So while we're still at the nascent stages of adoption, we believe that IoT opportunity for industrials could amount to $2 trillion by 2020. $2 trillion. The IoT has the potential to impact everything from new product opportunities to shop floor optimization to factory worker efficiency gains that will power top line and bottom line gains. That's according to Goldman Sachs. Now, $2 trillion, this isn't the $2 trillion we mentioned before about the unrealized $2 trillion should be in the GDP. This is simply IoT $2 trillion as well. So we're talking massive, massive numbers and massive opportunities for these data sensors all around the world. This as well, for IoT, is actually mentioned by Alexander as well, is a geofence trigger, okay? So we think of IoT devices, we talk about the, sort of the transparency or visibility of your products across the supply chain. So for example, something that's temperature controlled, whether it be pharmaceuticals or food product, what we call it is a digital footprint. Send back IoT triggers back to the, IoT sensor data back to the blockchain, and then on that ledger, you have the complete history of the temperature of whatever product that is all the way down the supply chain. You can be sure that you can say that at this moment the temperature started rising and that's what caused the issue. That's about building up your digital footprint, and that is like a continuous ping of that IoT sensor. Now what Alexander mentioned, which is very exciting, is actually using IoT triggers as event triggers, something to push ahead a smart contract, something to push ahead your supply chain. So a geofence trigger is basically something that enters that geofence area, and your next stage within your supply chain may be something like a final payment upon that final delivery, and you don't have to rely on humans. You don't have to rely on a human even doing something as simple as a scan. We love scanning. We love scanning QR codes, RFIDs, scanning cards. We're beep, 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 beep all the time, but we have to rely on those people to scan. When it comes to an IoT geofence trigger, it just enters that location, and that is the trigger itself to set off set off the next stage in your supply chain. So using IoT not only did build up your digital footprint, but also as an event trigger, that's huge, and that's going to push ahead supply chains in so many regions around the world. And also within IoT, as we mentioned, there's many IoT devices, cell phones, temperature sensors, humidity, so on and so forth. But we're also dealing with new technologies that are coming out, like when it comes to the new iPhone X's and they have the facial recognition. That is some unbelievable technology. Not being able to rely on, having to identify somebody based on their face and be able to implement that within other businesses. I think we're misusing that technology just to unlock your cell phone in a sense, and it could be used in so many other regions of business. We're also experimenting with OCR, license plate readers, where a car or truck can pull up to a secure border, and all that information is pulled up based on that license plate as well. What we're looking to do is eliminate human error, eliminate human interaction, so we can automate all these processes even further. Our next emerging technology, which in your guys' opinion is going to change supply chains the most, is artificial intelligence or machine learning. Or machine learning. Whoa, excuse me. All right. So artificial intelligence. What we're talking about here is these massive data sets. We're relying on IoT to bring in these massive data sets. We're storing on a trusted network on the blockchain, and there's significant potential for optimizations using these huge data sets. There's numerous variables of application as well. I'll show you a quick quote here from one of the an industry magnate, basically explaining that how important it is to be a part of this growth of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So artificial intelligence, deep learning, and machine learning, whatever you're doing, if you don't understand it, learn it. Because otherwise you're going to be a dinosaur within 3 years. That's according to Mark Cuban. He has a great point. I don't think this is pertaining to the people in this room based on that earlier question that we asked where everyone was saying how machine learning will optimize. So it is a great quote, but doesn't necessarily refer to you guys specifically. Now, when we're talking about data sets and all this amazing data that's brought in, based on these IoT triggers, we're feeding these data sets into crazy algorithms. These algorithms of these machine learning centers can look at this data and pick out the points of the data which will optimize our processes in general. This is not possible for humans just to see huge amounts of data, millions, if not billions, if not trillions of data points, and try to optimize based on it. It's not in our capacity. But machine learning centers and these algorithms definitely can do that for us. And what are the advantages of machine learning? You're thinking of, within supply chains, how's it an advantage, right? There's advantages within logistical routing, avoiding congestion, whether it's for ocean, rail, or transport trucks. There's also demand and supply optimization, where you actually can optimize, your demand based on past sales, based on past numbers, right? So what really intrigues me about optimizing based on supply and demand and all these other sort of techs that we're talking about and smart contracts, IoT and blockchain, and bringing it all together is what our result is an end-to-end automated workflow. End-to-end. So when we're talking end-to-end and we're talking about demand and supply optimization, we're talking about connecting directly to the ERP systems or inventory systems of your purchasers. As those inventory levels get to a certain low level, I would say, the signal is sent on the other end to the manufacturers to actually start the automation process of manufacturing, whether that's through robotics or CNC equipment or whatever machines are necessary in order to manufacture the parts that are needed for your demand and supply optimization. And then beyond that, we have amazing automation when it comes to, within the warehouses themselves, within the logistical warehouses and outside the warehouses too. We have JD Logistics out of China who's shipping out 200,000 packages per day using 4 people. 4 people shipping out 200,000 packages. The automation is just unreal. And then outside these warehouses, we have drones, which are some great demonstrations out there. We have unmanned transport trucks. There's even unmanned ocean liners are developing right now as well. So as these emerging technologies get developed, and as Alexander had mentioned as well, they're not mature. This stuff is not necessarily ready to use today, but it is for the future. Now we're emerging. We're just peeking out over that horizon, and we're going to see over the next 5, 10 years, these being used in businesses all over, and if you're not using it, you're falling behind. And that's what every business really wants, is that competitive edge. Let's talk a little bit of other companies who are using blockchain and other technologies as well, and how that can be incorporated to what SkyCell is doing too. So let's talk about Anheuser-Busch and their use of blockchain as well. They have a couple different uses of blockchain within marketing as well, but this specific use is the goal to traditionally paper-based process to a wholly digitized one to streamline the data sharing process. Once again, we talked about, I believe the data sharing was from Alexander's speech, was the thing that you guys said was the #1 thing within blockchain that should be used. This is what they're doing, and that's amazing. They had 12 successful real-world shipments in various regulatory requirements, and they reduced their operating costs, and they increased their supply chain visibility. All these amazing results by using this tech. So I'll give you a quick quote from Anheuser-Busch as well regarding blockchain specifically. That blockchain technology will be transformational to our business and the world. It reduces mistakes, digitizes information, and improves the supply chain process so we can focus on our core business of brewing the best beers for our consumers. That is directly from Anheuser-Busch, Danilo Figueiredo, which I'm probably pronouncing incorrectly, but I love this quote. Reason being that he's talking about specifically what we should be doing with our businesses. We should not be concentrating on supply chain. We should be concentrating on our actual products and our actual clients. And within my business, I realized that I was concentrating on compliances all day long and completely forgot about my clients, completely forgot about the actual things that push my business ahead. So what we're trying to do is automate these processes so you don't have to worry about it. You worry about your brewing the best beers in the world or whatever your product is, regardless. So this Anheuser-Busch use case over here was a part of an Accenture consortium, which was mentioned before. We have Maersk doing work with IBM as well, Mitsubishi OSK with IBM as well. So we're going back to SkyCell's 1.2 billion data points. These companies alone, we're talking about trillions, if not quadrillions of data points will be fed into these machine learning centers based on these emerging technologies being integrated and implemented with these amazing companies. Now, I know a question that you guys have, these companies and these tests that they're doing, how do they do it? What are they doing exactly? How are they storing stuff on the blockchain? How are they incorporating these techs within their business? So myself, I'm the CEO of Morpheus Network. We're a middleware supply chain solution. We're connecting all these disjointed parts of supply chain within our platform. I just wanted to show you a quick, very brief demo about how to leverage IoT and blockchain within our middleware solution. So I have a very short video.
So today
you guys can play it in the back as well.
Pharma cold chain compliance functionality of the platform by sending a shipment from Laboratorios Especializados to the Zambrano Hospital Group. Now this is a vaccine called Prevnar. It's for meningitis, and it needs to be stored at a constant temperature between 2 and 6 degrees. And that is sent from the manufacturing facility in Mexico City to the warehouse in Monterrey, and we save that as a smart contract. So we previously set up the master shipping contract, and now we'll go ahead and configure the workflow using the simple drag and drop interface. So we'd set up the purchase orders from SAP. We'll add a continual QR code to track that shipment from Mexico City to Monterrey at the Carta Porte, and then set up a couple of IoT triggers. First for the cold chain on 6 degrees, and the second one for a geofence when the truck arrives to the setters in Monterrey. And finally, we've set up a payment from the Zambrano Group to the parent company in New York. This will be completely automated. So the supply chain manager can use the digital footprint to track that shipment from Mexico to Monterrey, registering any cold chain compliance events, all the way through to proof of delivery and payment. And finally, we write the key facts to an immutable record of truth on the blockchain for future reference.
All right, excellent. Yes, so basically it's showing the use of IoT within temperature sensors, geolocation as well within a cold chain, keeping track of it all, and using a drag and drop interface to set it all up. And like Alexander mentioned, when it comes to the internet, when we hop on, to Facebook or Google, you don't look at the back end wires. You don't want to know how Google works. You can look into it, it's very interesting, but setting something up as the drag and drop and just setting to a temperature you want, is a very simple process, and you're leveraging the most complex emerging technology. So I think that's fantastic, and really it is about the future and be able to use these technologies in the easiest way possible to optimize your business. So just to sum up, I know you guys have listened to more than a couple hours now of talking, which is very impressive. What I wanted to say about these emerging technologies and what's happening nowadays, it's not about companies like Morpheus Network or like IBM, or the blockchain partner to come in and tell you for your business what you need to do. This is a collaborative process. We need to know your pain points. Your pain points, there's many overlapping pain points, but you have to know what your pain points are for your specific business. Even the initiatives with the UN. The UN isn't putting this data pipeline out there saying, okay, now everyone use this pipeline because we've created it. It's a collaborative process with countries around the world, with all these different chambers around the world. So that's when it comes to, for you guys to look introspectively at your own businesses, at these collaborative processes with tech companies to really push forward the global GDP. And as I mentioned, we have that $2 trillion, that biggest problem in the world. Let's use these new technologies, these new emerging technologies, implement them, and then we can have another discussion about some other major problem. So thank you guys so much for taking the time today and listening to me speak some.